All right, thank you all for joining this WTS Central Florida Lunch Program. We first want to start out by celebrating our sponsors that you can see on the screen here. We appreciate the support for the WTS Central Florida chapter to advance women and advance transportation. When we were planning 2020, I was hoping to do a summer book club. Well, we all know 2020 has not gone as planned, but our Vice President, Snehal Ambari, came up with a great creative idea. Instead of reading a book, have a panel of transportation leaders discuss a book that motivated or inspired them. Great idea. So Snehal was our champion for this event, and we appreciate that she took the lead with the team to get everything pulled together today. And even though Snehal didn't have you guys have to read a book, we do want to get some input from you on our polling questions. So in the chat box, there's a link to the Mentimeter, and you can log on that, and the information is shown on this slide. When I first saw this slide about the stuff for the logistics for the meeting, I was reminded of, remember when we used to go to movie theaters and watch movies together? And they would have those messaging up front about buy snacks, turn off your phone. So that's what my brain went to with this. And so welcome to WTS Cinema. Silence your phones or put your audio on mute. If you could turn off your camera if you're not one of the panelists, that will help everybody just focus on the panel discussion. And feel free to use the chat box for questions or comments that you have along the way. As for coming attractions, there's a lot, and I don't want to take time away today, but we will have an email this afternoon giving you the coming attractions that we have with WTS Central Florida. Now I'm honored to introduce our moderator for today. Yvonne Lopez-Diaz is a vice president with HNTB, and her title is National Workforce Pursuit Strategist. That mouthful means that she collaborates with leadership shaping the workforce for super mega projects. I take that to mean that she gets to look at the really big, really cool projects and how to staff them. Prior to HNTB, she was at the Bear Corporation and had various roles, including the HR manager for the Caribbean region. She holds a bachelor's degree in human resource management. And those of us who know Yvonne know that she has a strong commitment to family, community, and professional organizations. I'm going to highlight one. Guess which one? WTS. She's been a member for 15 years. She was our past scholarship chairman for the Central Florida chapter. At the same time, she was a member and a leader at the Greater New York chapter as the Glass Ceiling Committee chair. I recently got to see that her installation on the WTS Foundation board, which guides our scholarship and educational events for WTS International. Yvonne was named the top 10 women to watch in transportation by Eno Center for Transportation in conjunction with WTS International. But for us, for today, I consider her one of the top 4 women to watch in transportation now. So welcome, Yvonne, and I am going to turn my camera off so we can focus on the top 4 women.
Thank you, Amy, for that amazing introduction. I was wondering, who was that person you were talking about? Very humbling, so thank you for the wonderful comments. So good afternoon, all, and welcome to our very first panel discussion as part of our Read to Succeed book series. And I'm looking forward to seeing the responses to the first poll question. Wow, look how exciting. Just last week, the majority of us read an entire book. Well, you know, working from home, we have a lot of time on our hands now, so we see the responses going up. That's fantastic. Well, that's one of the reasons why we put this panel together, was to really understand not only what you're reading, but also give you some perspective as to what some of our transportation leaders, especially those who I'm going to talk about here pretty soon, what are some of the books that they're reading and their inspiration behind it. So I'm honored to serve as your moderator today for what will be a very thought-provoking discussion. Over the next hour, our panelists will be sharing their thoughts on a book that has made an impact on them. We will take time to ask our panelists questions about their book of choice, the impact it made on their career, and what led them to choose that book. Should be a great discussion. Before I begin, however, let me share with you my thoughts on a book that made an impact on me and my career and me as an individual. This book is called Greater Than Yourself, and I'm pretty sure that some in the audience have either heard the book or have read it themselves. This book, written by Steve Farber, who's also the founder of the Extreme Leadership Institute, is based on the concept of investing yourself in others to help them grow to be better than you. It provides strategies on how to make others greater than you while expecting them to do the same for others. Some of us liken this concept to pay it forward. This book made such an impact on me when I read it, and frankly was the turning point in my career when I realized that my work from that point forward was not about what I could do to create success, but it was about what I could do to create success in others so that we leave this world in a better place. The one strategy that I took away from this book was this: when you are investing yourself in others, you must be cognizant about giving them everything. That means your knowledge, your connections, your insights, your advice, your counsel, your time. You share your life lessons, you encourage them, you challenge them, and you give them open and honest feedback. It's about investing in their bank, making deposits in their bank without expecting anything in return. That's why this book made an impact on me. So much so that I went out of my way to find the author so that I could ask him questions about his inspiration behind writing this book. Guess what? I found him on LinkedIn. I connected with him. I invited him to dinner and his wife, and he answered all of my questions. That was 7 years ago today, folks. Steve Farber and I are good friends. Every month, I get a text from Steve asking me, who am I investing myself in today? Every month I get that text from him. Steve has since written other books about leadership and love. Now you may ask, love? Yes, love, or as he says, love what you do in the service of people who love what you do. That's about really enjoying what you do so that you can make it enjoyable for others as well. That was the book that I chose. That's the book that's made an impact on me. And I hope that maybe one day you can pick up the book and read it yourself. Now, let me share that I am privileged to introduce to you today 3 of our industry's trailblazers, and in my opinion, incredibly inspiring women leaders. I will start with Nancy Clements, who is a Senior Vice President for WGI, leading their transportation division. Previously, Nancy served as the Planning and Production Director for Florida's Turnpike Enterprise and as a project manager on the $14 billion Central Artery Tunnel project in Boston. She holds a BA in economics and a BS degree in civil engineering. She is a registered professional engineer in both the state of Florida and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Nancy worked in the transportation industry has worked in the transportation industry since 1990. Let me tell you a little fun fact about Nancy. She started a blog in April, just recently, about environmental conservation and preservation called OurCommonPlanet.com. She welcomes any guest writers, so look for OurCommonPlanet.com and read more about this website that she has started. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you.
Now, let me tell you about Gail. Gail Woods has 34 years of experience and expertise in transportation engineering and project management on highway and toll roads, traffic control design, and value engineering. She is an assistant vice president and serves as the Orlando office leader for Trend Systems, where she is dedicated to client service, offering significant project experience and capabilities in the management and design of small and large transportation projects. Gail's effective project management stems from providing clear definitions of roles and establishing specific areas of accountability. She takes pride in her ability to address project goals and challenges proactively. Gail is a proud graduate of the Florida A&M University, Florida State University College of Engineering, and an active member of the Florida Engineering Society. And near and dear to my heart, Women's Transportation, WTS, as well, where she has served as a mentor through the Emerging Professionals Program for the last 2 years. Gail loves to bake and is church famous for her sour cream pound cake and red velvet cake. Wow, that sounds tasty. Welcome, Gail. And finally, Satya Lori. Satya is a vice president and Florida client service leader at HNTB Corporation. Satya's 30 years of diverse experience in the transportation industry includes design, program management, and project management. She brings expertise in various project delivery methods such as design bid build, and public-private partnerships. She was the design manager for the design joint venture for the $2.3 billion I-4 Ultimate P3 project, which of course is all near and dear to our heart as well. Satya received her bachelor's degree from the National Institute of Technology in Calicut, India, a master's degree in civil engineering from the University of South Florida, and an MBA from the University of Tampa. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a sports fanatic on our panel today because Satya loves pro football and enjoys going to games as well. When she is not at a game, she is usually watching it on TV and, like most of us do, yelling at the TV as well. Welcome, Satya. Now, I hope you join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists. Nancy, let me start with you. Can you share with us a little bit about the book you chose, The 4 Essential Keys to Effective Communication, and why that book?
So it starts back with a team meeting that I had with our senior leadership team. And we were going through, brainstorming all of the different things that we wanted to do for the coming year. And one of the things that we had kind of keep landing on, and I think a lot of leadership teams land on, is communication, right? Everyone kind of thinks communication is a big deal, and we don't always do it really well. And so we were kind of looking for a way to improve our communication. We pass a lot of information down, but sometimes it doesn't feel like it lands properly. So on a side note, our senior leadership team all recently took StrengthsFinder. And what we found was that nobody on the senior leadership team, and we're talking 17 people, had empathy as their top 5 characteristics. And so when I started looking for a book to read about, or some books to read about communication, this book stood out to me because it had in it a how-to guide to empathic listening, and it came with a little 12-day challenge. So it sounded something interesting to me. So that's why I chose the book.
Fantastic. So Nancy, tell us a little bit about, were you hooked immediately when you read the title, or did it take some time to get used to the really good stuff in the book?
So I think the good thing about the book is a pretty short read. It's pretty kind of nice, happy concepts, empathic listening. How bad can that be, So it was, so in that sense, it was really good. On the other side of it, though, the concept seemed really simplistic. And so I think at the end of reading the book, I kind of was thinking, okay, so what? But I wanted to stick with it because, like I said, we needed something to answer the question about better communication and something that brought us more empathy with regard to our staff. And so three of us got together and talked about the book, and all three of us had that same reaction. The concept seemed kind of simplistic, but we decided, let's take the 12-day challenge. And after a couple of days, it was hard. And so this is kind of what really clinched it for me of why I really like this book, was the actual action of going through this 12-day challenge, and then having done it with other people. Every few days we could talk about where we were. And I'll tell you, I failed some days. Like even the simple concepts of, everyone that you talk to have positive thoughts about the people that you're talking to. That's hard with every person that you work with. And so it was really, that's what I think brought it home for me, was this 12-day challenge and being able to discuss that with other colleagues and how they were doing and what we learned and how we can get better.
That's great.
I think we saw improvements in each other. I mean, that was the other thing. We could kind of validate that for each other.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to ask you about the key takeaway from the book, because you said the learnings that we got from the book. What were some of the things that you then, from reading the book, doing the 12-day challenge, working with your colleagues, did you actually implement as a leader in your organization?
So I think that what I've implemented is, for me personally, I think that I listen to people differently. I try to get a little more excited. Empathy is about not just be nice. It's about learning to feel what other people feel. And so I think that that's the big thing that I've changed with regard to how I manage. And I bring this book up all the time. When I have a meeting with my managers or something like that, we just had a meeting the other day and someone said that they had issues with feeling like they didn't feel like they were being heard and that kind of thing. And we started talking about this book again. So it's come in handy, I think.
Yeah, I love your perspective on sharing it with others and really helping them highlight, or at least what resonated with them as well, in terms of the whole aspect of communication and how it's important it is for every professional, right? You talk about empathy in such a critical leadership trait and characteristic. But as you think about the book and that experience you just shared with one of your colleagues, what
Hello?
It seems like Yvonne is frozen there. We'll give her a second to hopefully get back on.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. Did you lose me?
Yes, we lost you.
Oh,
go ahead.
Pardon,
We can hear you now.
Sorry about that. Okay, so I said something brilliant. You probably didn't hear it. I'm sure it was brilliant. But anyway, so let me kind of conclude with this question here, Nancy. What message did you find from reading the book for professionals early in their career or mid-career?
So the first thing is and I don't think I mentioned it yet, the 4 keys, I mean, that's the name of the book. The 4 keys are empathic awareness, empathic listening, empathic speaking, and then putting it all together to empathic dialogue. But if I had to say what's the sort of most important thing, it's that first step, empathic awareness, because I think that just puts you in the mindset. And then, like I said, for your question was specifically about what message. I think it goes back to the thinking that empathy is not just about being nice. It's about feeling what other people feel. And I actually have a quote here from Seth Godin. He says, and by the way, he didn't write the book, but I follow him elsewhere. He's a marketing professional. He says, that person across the counter or the web from you probably has very different experiences, beliefs, and expectations than you. Starting with your experiencing and assuming it matches theirs is a trap. And so that's why I think that empathy is so important, because like I said, it's really putting yourself into someone else's shoes. And then I'll end on the fact that if you're going to try this 12-day challenge, I would definitely say do it with somebody else. I have like a little spreadsheet if anybody would like to get that. Of course, there's the challenge that's in the back of the book as well. He follows step by step about how to do that. And it's not just for work. It can be for, family as well. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. That was fantastic. I've heard the book. I've wanted to. It's on my shelf in my office, and I'm going to pick it up tomorrow and absolutely open the first page. So I'm really looking forward and inspired to read it.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Gail, tell us about your book. Oh my God, one of my favorites, Becoming.
Yes.
Tell us about your book, Gail.
So,
why did you choose this book?
I chose Becoming by Michelle Obama. And this is a poster that I received going to a luncheon of women that have read the book, gone to her conferences to hear her speak, and just talk about how we can upbuild our community. But again, I started with Crucial Conversations, but my heart was at Becoming. And when you read Becoming, it is a beautiful memoir from who I call my forever First Lady, Michelle Obama. And she takes you on a journey from her beginnings on the South Side of Chicago to becoming the First Lady of the United States of America. And to me, representation matters. So as a Black woman in corporate America, I view Michelle Obama as the ultimate role model. She's compassionate, she's caring, she's a motivator, she knows how to take care of business, she's a great speaker, and she really cares about the next generation of women and how their impact is going to be on society. Again, as I mentioned, I've read the book, I have it on audio, she narrates the book, it's wonderful. I went to Fort Lauderdale to hear her speak, and again, attended that luncheon.
Wow. If many were like me when I started seeing the press around the book early on, well before it was printed and ready for pickup, I actually pre-ordered it probably a good 6 months before, and I was so excited about the book because of everything I've heard. Not only, of course, she's just an amazing woman and someone that a lot of us look up to, but just from the title, I was trying to imagine what was her inspiration behind writing the book. So what was your initial reaction, Gail, were you hooked immediately, or did it take some time for you to get used to it?
I was hooked immediately. I was one of the first people to go out and buy the book. And, sometimes life gets in the way and you really don't have an opportunity to read like you want to. So that's why I got the audiobook. And I've listened to the book through audio. And I highly recommend that to everyone because you can really feel her as she tells her stories, the one where the death of the friend and just how much her family means to her. And it was one of those books that I really didn't want to end. At the end, it talks about, the ending of the book and, just wanting more.
As I was reading the book as well, and the one story that resonated with me, and it was very early in the first, I think maybe the first or second chapter, where she talked about learning how to play the piano.
Yes.
And her auntie really just pressing on her and her
Yes.
brother, they have got to learn it, and
Yes.
just really being adamant with them. I mean, there were many stories, but that one just
Yes.
from the very get-go, that grabbed you. So Gail, tell us about 3 of your major takeaways from this book. As you mentioned, clearly Michelle was, or former First Lady, is an inspiration to many as well as yourself. But what were some of the key takeaways, if you can cite the top 3?
I would say, number 1, don't allow anyone to squash your dreams. She talks of the story where she met with her counselor and told them that she wanted to go to Princeton. And they told her that you may not be Princeton material. And that really resonated with me because in high school, they make you take these tests to see what you would be good at. And I knew from the 11th grade that I wanted to be a civil engineer. And the test and the counselors were like, well, you're good with accounting. Why don't you stick with, going to a 2-year college? But that's not what I wanted to do. So, from reading this book and, being a mentor and telling people, don't allow other people to squash your dreams. And really don't allow people to tell you what you can and can't do. Again, I was in college and I had a professor tell me, because I was struggling in one of my classes, do you really want to be an engineer? Maybe engineering really isn't for you. So I'm one of these people that once my mind is made up that I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And again, proved them all wrong. Got my degree, became a PE. And so again, don't let anyone squash your dreams. What also I liked about the book is the fact that she had a circle of friends that she really leaned and depended on. So I would tell everyone that's, listening, find your circle of friends that can encourage you, can empower you, can tell you when things are right, but also give you, when you need to hear the hard truth about something that you need to correct. And I'm very thankful for the friends that I have, Stacy and Sherry Ann and others that, I really depend on and listen to their opinions about, things not only, in the workplace, but also in life. And again, don't be afraid to try new things. Michelle Obama went to Princeton, started out, working at a different company. And then she went on with her husband to all these different groups and communities and speaking, and ended up in the White House. With the spirit of fear, she may not have wanted to do that, but she never let fear let her try new things.
I don't know about you all, or certainly those on the call that are an audience, but I had goosebumps last week when I was watching her on TV, and of course the nomination of Kamala as well. So Michelle is certainly an inspiration, but we're proud of you, Gail, for what you've achieved and what you overcame as well. Very proud of you.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Why do you think the men and women of WCS should read this book, Gail?
I think in the era that we're in now, in looking at diversity and inclusion, I know most of the readers have read books by, white authors. But I think reading Becoming gives you an insight of what it's like to be a Black woman in America and in that journey. So I think it's also good for men and women to read. I was really surprised when I went to Fort Lauderdale for her conference, the number of men that were in attendance. I thought it was going to be, you know, just a sea of women, but I was really surprised at the number of men that were in attendance. But I think this book is good for men and women, and definitely should be on the read.
Wonderful, thank you. And my last question, Gail, for you is, what's next for you? What's next on your reading list, on your long
Next on my reading list, I actually have the book here. It's called Segregation by Design: Local Politics and Inequalities in American Cities. So that is my next read.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you for your insights, Gail. They're very much appreciated. So we're going to conclude our panel talk with Satya. And Satya, you chose Leading with Questions, which is a required read in many organizations. Can you share with us your thoughts on why this book made your reading list?
Sure. So actually, this was a gift to me, this book, from my husband. And he said, you'd probably really like this book, maybe because I do ask a lot of questions. So I don't know if that's the reason he bought me the book. But I really chose this book because since when I was young, you know, young engineer, growing, learning, all of that, I did ask a lot of questions. And I was lucky to have leaders and mentors who helped me learn from those questions and didn't like stop me from asking questions and stifle me. Because back in those days, you did have leadership that didn't feel like a young engineer should be asking so many questions. And I kind of took that progression of my professional career to where I helped the teams, and I would ask young engineers into meetings and say, hey, be open about asking questions and learn from all of this. It's not just questions from peers, especially. And this book is really about asking the questions the right way, right? It's how do you ask to draw out the innovative, creative, like collaborative responses and not just be very judgmental. You don't ask the judgmental questions which kind of stifle people from answering it because they get afraid. They go, hey, I don't know. Like when you say, why is your project behind schedule? You know, if you ask something like that, people usually tend to back off. Instead, if you ask a question like, how do you think of the project is progressing and what can be done? People tend to be more receptive to the response to the question and respond appropriately. And you can probably help them kind of achieve their final goal by not being that direct and pointed with your questions. And I think as a leader, promoting like that questioning culture is important because you really want to grow your team, grow your company, and grow everybody in your environment to be able to say, hey, I have the opportunity to ask the questions, learn from the questions, and become a good leader. The book actually has a couple of good examples too, like the Bay of Pigs invasion, which I've read in the Kennedy book too, which is one of the big examples. They say that there were people in that team that really questioned the whole invasion, but they were afraid to ask because the leaders weren't the questioning group of people who didn't want anybody to ask any questions, and they sat silent, and we all know what ended up happening. That was really a disaster. So there are lots of examples in the history, but there's also real world examples where people sometimes tend to want to dictate what they want to hear, the leadership style, right? Instead of being the questioning style to say, hey, I want to hear what you have to say, and let's accept everybody's responses before we make a decision on it.
That's great. I appreciate your perspective on that. You know, Satya, when Chris came home and bought you the book and you looked at the title, you know, Leading with Questions. I mean, this is probably the same impression I got when I received the book, and we got it as part of an all leadership meeting that we attended. But what were some of your pre-read expectations? And then after you read the book, what was different?
So like you said, the book's title was very interesting, right? Leading with Questions. And I looked at the subtitle of the book, which actually made more sense, how leaders find the right solution by knowing what to ask. So that's the part that got my attention. So really, in the beginning, the book was a little slow in the beginning, and he even picked on me about it. He was like, are you reading the book I gifted you? You know, so as you read through it, you really kind of latch on to they have the 6 hallmarks of questioning. One of those things is, are you okay with saying, I don't know, as a response, right? That's a big thing. A lot of people in a leadership position have a hard time saying, I don't know. And going beyond that, let me allow somebody to ask questions, right? You're really kind of opening up in conversations and meetings to say, hey, encourage them to ask questions and kind of talk through the questions. So I don't want to go through all 6 hallmarks, but I really think a lot of those, the way he presented the different aspects of the hallmarks, as well as how you can take it from just getting innovative ideas to actually messaging to your team to help grow the team and develop their skill sets. So the book flowed very well from that aspect. So my thoughts on the book completely changed from when I read the title to when I actually went through the entire book.
That's great. You know, I've used, after reading this book, I've used many of the strategies with my own team, right? When we're talking through issues, when we're talking through projects that we're working on, and even when we're talking about their career, is all leading with questions. So you're not just eliciting, if you will, a yes or no response. You're really giving some thoughtful time and attention to really seeking to understand. That's what we all work for as leaders. We all work towards, if you will, especially those who are working with clients. We are trying to seek to understand, dig deeper, peel back the onion skin, uncover what's really important. And this book really helps you get there. It's a phenomenal book.
Yes, it does.
So why do you think, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Gail as well. Why do you think the men and women of WTS should read this book?
I think this book is for everyone. It's not just a leadership book, right? It gets you thinking about how you interact professionally and personally. I really felt like there were aspects of it that could really apply to your personal lifestyle with children and your family. So I really feel like you can grow both professionally and personally with this book. And I do feel like it's for all ages too, right? It's for young engineers to mid-level to senior people, because you really learn a lot about how to do that questioning as a young engineer versus, you know, as a leader, how to emulate that style of questioning mind and get these younger folks to answer a lot of the questions. I think it really gets people motivated to respond and listen and embrace that questioning culture.
Fantastic. I'm going to ask you one last question, Satya, but before I do that, I'm going to ask the audience members. Our chat feature is open, so please bring those questions forward. We want to hear from you. Our 3 panelists are here to respond to your questions. Encourage the submission of questions. This is your opportunity to ask them questions or seek additional information on any of the strategies they share. But Satya, so let me ask you this question. We have many young professionals and others on the line with us today. How could this book make an impact on their career?
So like I said, I mean, for me, I think it really goes back to how my experience was, right? I really had the opportunity to ask a lot of questions as a young engineer and learn from the questions and learn from not just senior people, but ask the questions to everybody, right? So that you can learn different aspects of engineering. And I was big into bridge design, and Gail knows that. She used to work with me back in those days. And as I went through my career and asking all those questions, I learned that I really wanted to do more than just that, right? I really learned that I liked the project management side and the program management side. And I don't think if I hadn't asked all those questions, I could have gotten where I am right now, you know, getting beyond what my initial thought was, because when I came out of school, boy, I really wanted to be a bridge engineer. I was a very nerdy structural engineer. So I really do feel like the younger engineers, this was an opportunity to kind of figure out life. You know, like when you go to college, they always say the first couple of years, you still are trying to figure out, is this your degree? So this is kind of what is your path in engineering? So I really think it's important for all career level people to read this book.
That's wonderful, and I appreciate your sage words there, and hopefully they resonated with everyone as well. Again, I would encourage our audience members to submit any questions to the chat box. We're here to answer those questions. These are 4 phenomenal books. Obviously, the one that I mentioned, Greater Than Yourself, the 4 Essential Keys to Effective Communication, Leading with Questions, such an impactful book. and then, of course, Becoming. Just four amazing books. So any questions for our panelists or for myself? Be happy to answer any of those. Please submit those to the chat feature. And while we're waiting on that, let's go ahead and give you one more poll question. Remember to use the Menti app to record your responses. But let's go ahead and get your responses to this question. What new strategy learned today will you start tomorrow? We've got question culture. I love that. Empathy, better listening. Communication, lead with questions. So good. Keep coming and we want just a whole bunch of them to come on the screen here. This image is going to look amazing. Motivate others. We talked about the empathy and the culture and understanding the culture. Listening better. Communication, questioning. I love that. Questioning, motivating. I'm trying to read them. Grow through others. Oh my God, near and dear to my heart too. Investing in others, investing yourself in others. Oh, just wonderful responses. But here's one question that Jaslyn has posed for the panelists, which I thought was a great question. Have any of you thought about writing a book? Gail?
This is Gail. My husband is the writer in the family. That is not my gift. So I would be a no.
Okay, Satya?
Me too. I'm not a writer. I prefer to read the books, you know.
Exactly.
That's not my style.
Nancy, you're dying to write a book, right?
As you know, I started a blog.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, actually, I would love to write a book. I don't know that I would I don't know if I have the background to be able to write about sort of this stuff. I like reading this stuff and putting it into action. I think I'd be a mystery writer if I were a writer.
I see. Well, here's a question for Satya. Satya, is there a question that you regret asking in your professional career or wish that you had asked it differently? Now, I guess this question could apply to anyone, but let's go ahead and start with Satya. Is there a question you regret asking early in your career?
I can't think of a specific question, but I know I have done it in my younger days, because sometimes, and that's where this book was very cool about, you know, how you phrase the question, right? It wasn't the question that I asked, it's the way I phrased a question that really put me in a bad spot with leadership when I was young. So you kind of learn from them that, hey, think before you formulate that question and speak out, right? Because sometimes, and I got much better about not just the verbal side to the written side. You kind of need to make sure how you phrase something so that it doesn't come across as incorrect, because the question I asked was not something that was bad. It was just the way I asked. And that was my mentor who actually picked on me about it. And he basically told me that. He says, that's not how you ask this. You know, you put everybody in a bad spot by asking the way you asked in front of a client. So it was back in those days, still learning, you know, so.
That's great. That's great. Here's a question for Nancy. Let me make sure I go down on the chat feature low here. Lillian is asking a question. After learning how to listen empathetically, do you have any tips on what to do when you find yourself talking with someone you know isn't listening in the same way?
Oh boy, that's hard.
Great question. Great question.
I think the key is you have to continue to try to listen to what they're saying, because maybe it's something that you're not answering that's not connecting with them. And so I think that's part of the key, is that you have to find out what they're truly saying. And so it may seem like, you know, they're not on the same path, but you got to find out then what they're truly saying. And I think the more you do it, the more you will find that you can ask better questions. And maybe the two books go together. in that,
Absolutely.
you know, the more that you understand, you can ask more questions to get at what might be the issue.
Thank you, thank you. And Nancy, one more question. Curious minds want to know, when your leadership team, what did your leadership team do when they realized they lacked empathy as a top five trait after reading the book?
It's kind of funny. I think we wear it as a badge. So we're working on it, and I think it's really good to know, right? Because, and I think that things like this, learning about effective communication and learning about how to turn our empathy on, it just brings it to the forefront so that people are thinking about it. I think people still make the mistake, and I think I said it earlier, that empathy is just being nice. That's not it. It's much deeper than that.
Sure, sure. Gail, question for you. After reading the book Becoming, can you share your perspective on what managers can do in the future based on Michelle's book? What are some of the strategies they can employ?
I think one of the things that they can do is just listening to their employees and listening to all sides of a particular situation. You find that Michelle Obama did that quite a bit, and just listening to all sides, and yeah. And again, not squashing your the dreams of your employees. You may have an employee that says, "Hey, I want your job in 10 years," you know, and so what are you going to do? Are you going to squash their dreams or help them, you know, get to where they want to be?
Thank you, thank you. Wonderful questions, and I would encourage everyone, keep sending the questions into the chat box. I'm going to answer one, and that was from Snehal. She's asked me, do I have a GTY? Do I have a greater than yourself project of my own? And absolutely, I actually have several sprinkled around the organization. One that I will point to specifically is Kira Larson, who is a project engineer in our organization. Kira reached out to me after reading this book and asked if I would be her one of her mentors at HNTB, and I gladly took on that responsibility. We scheduled frequent engagement discussions, and when I scheduled those mentor-mentee check-ins, I will never move them. I will never change them. I will never cancel them. That was her time to tell me what she was focusing on as an individual to encourage her growth. I introduced her to the CEO of our company. I introduced her to many of our leaders. I brought her along on some of the meetings along with me. I introduced her to Steve Farber, the author, on a phone call, and she absolutely loved that. Today she serves on one of the boards at HNTB, has grown as an individual, and I am so proud of her. There's another person who's actually on the line here with us today, and that's Nicole Hunter. She's as one of our audience members. Nicole is somebody that I have an immense level of passion for as an individual, a fighter, a professional, just an all-around wonderful human being. And Nicole and I spent lots of time together several years ago in working through her own development. So yes, I have many GTYs, men and women, at HNTB, and the one thing that I always expect from them, and you probably will remember from how I started the conversation today, is if I'm investing my time in you, you have got to find someone you're investing your time in. You've got to give them everything. You've got to give them your time, your resources, your relationships, and don't expect anything in return. Just let them shine. That's how you're going to make them greater than yourself. So thank you for that question, Sneha. Okay, so we're nearing the end here, and I do want to allow great questions, and there are others. I wish we can get to all of them, but I do want to. I realize everyone's time is precious. I'm not sure if are we going to go to the last poll question, Catherine? So we talked about the key takeaways from today, and so here's the last question: what books or podcasts will you recommend? Go ahead and send some of those in. Okay. I'm not sure how the responses are going to come through, Catherine. So I'm going to go ahead and just do our quick wrap up here. I want to thank our panelists, Gail, Nancy, Satya, for your amazing participation today. The wonderful words of advice and sage counsel that you have given everyone, talking about these 3 amazing books. Some of them are certainly on my reading to-do list. I would like to thank our organizers of the event. This is from the WTS Central Florida chapter. And of course, all of you audience members for your participation today. We could not have made this successful without your participation. Please note that each of our panelists are available for any follow-up questions. And Catherine, if we can turn to that slide, you can certainly write their contact information and phone numbers are available on the screen. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. I hope that you found today's session to be thought-provoking and insightful. And we look forward to seeing you in future events like this one, brought to you by WTS Central Florida. Thank you and have a blessed and wonderful rest of the day today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye
Thank
now.
you so much.
You're welcome.